Ladies and gentlemen, mark this date on your calendar with red ink. Yes, the 16th of November 2024 is the grand anniversary celebration of Revelation Revealed Ministry. It will be celebrated in fine style, namely a grand musical extravaganza. On the lineup, we have Destiny, Aliana, Rosenia, Edify, Thea Frank, Latoya Mullins, Rupert Hurlock, and Victor Thompson, and Dr. Winston Hurlock, and many more. You just can't afford to miss this evening. It will be great. Make sure you invite a friend and come out and celebrate with us at the Seventh-day Adventist Church, 4350 Lawrence East in Scarborough. See you then.
So welcome everyone to the iron and calcium connection. Are the two connected? Not really, but on a whole, they are two extremely important minerals that seem to both get robbed from your body for the same reason. And extremely vital minerals. And the other thing that's very similar about iron and calcium is that you have to consume food in order to have these minerals to be present in your body. So very, very important. And as I mentioned, we are going to start with calcium. And if we have the time in part one here, hopefully this will just be a part one series, but if we have the time, we will get into iron right afterwards. If not, we will continue this next Thursday. So with that being said, let's jump right in. And as always, if you have any questions, please just throw them in the chat. I will do my best to answer them near the end or as we go. And just want to also make sure that everybody clearly understands. And I'd love to know what city you're in. If you're not from Toronto, I'd like to know where you're from. So throw that in the chat so I can welcome you. I'm recognizing most people here, but there's some new faces. So I'd love to know where you are calling in from or coming from if you're able to throw that in the chat. So here we go with our iron and calcium connection. So first of all, understanding that your recommended daily intake, and we'll go through that a little bit more, is about 1,000 milligrams. So something's very interesting here is that your body doesn't actually need 1,000 milligrams. But the reality is that even with the most bioavailable calcium, your body only uses a certain percentage of it. So good science has figured out that if you take 1,000 milligrams of calcium, that will give it enough of the recommended daily amount. That gives it enough of the calcium so that your bones and body can keep functioning. 1% of calcium is stored in the blood. 99% of calcium stored in the bones and teeth. And your teeth are the most calcium dense bones in your entire body. After 50, we have less of an ability to absorb calcium. And do you know, once we hit 30 seems so young, we actually start losing bone minerals and density. Yes, quite rapidly. So that's important to know. If you are entering into menopause, pregnant, breastfeeding, you definitely need a lot more calcium. Your body doesn't produce calcium. You have to get calcium externally. That's also important to know. Your bones are your calcium reservoir. I want you to keep that in your mind. That's where calcium is actually stored. So we always think about it, oh, your bones need calcium. Yes, they need calcium for their strength, but the reason why they're so strong and they're full of calcium is because that's actually where the body stores 99% of its calcium. But keep in mind that you must have vitamin D for calcium absorption. That is super important, or that calcium can't get inside the bone. It's like a closed door. But also, even though it appears that only 1% of calcium is in the blood, Although only 1% of calcium is in the blood, that is a huge and necessary amount. And you're going to see why in a minute. That 1% of calcium plays such a huge function in so many very integral parts and organs of your body. Your heart, your nerves, your muscles will not function without that 1% floating around. And if you start to lose that 1%, which I'll show you in a minute, if you start to lose that 1% of calcium for some reason, your body has to find it. All right, let's keep going. So if you have symptoms, you have not enough calcium in your body, this, friends, is mostly due to the 1%. This is what I want you to see, how important calcium is, that 1%, okay? Hypoglycemia, muscles, cramps, and spasms, because every single contraction your muscles make, which your heart is a muscle, needs calcium, even a minute amount, but it needs calcium. If you have numbness or tingling in your extremities, remember that's nerves. Your nerves need calcium in order for their function. Fatigue, that could be low calcium, irregular heart rhythms, and that's because your heart's a muscle and it needs calcium. In fact, many of the high blood pressure medications block calcium from going into your heart, the calcium blockers, so that your heart doesn't pump so hard, because as it pumps hard, your blood pressure is going up. But guess what? It's pumping hard on purpose because your blood is too thick. You're probably not drinking enough water. But then the doctor will give you medication to not make it pump so hard. Well, that can cause a host of other issues, but that's not the subject for tonight. Seizures, memory loss, dry skin, osteoporosis, arthritis, mostly osteoporosis, but arthritis a little bit. Arthritis is more of an inflammation condition. Inflammatory condition, but these are some of the symptoms of low calcium or major calcium loss. Okay, and if you have any questions, just throw it in the chat. So calcium absorption, that doesn't happen by itself. Your body needs several other nutrients in order for calcium to be absorbed and used properly, including magnesium, phosphorus, and vitamin D and K. Now think about that phosphorus. With that phosphorus, although it's needed in very small amounts. And this is something that I need you guys to really pay attention to tonight, because this phosphorus is absolutely key for your absorption of calcium. So many factors can play, including how old you are, with how you will absorb calcium, because after we cross 50, we have less hydrochloric acid, and we will see a few things in a moment of how calcium is absorbed. But your age, the older we get, it's just the reality. You have less of an ability to absorb calcium, and that's why as you get older, you need to increase your calcium, because your body has less of an ability to absorb it. You could have a certain disease, which we'll talk about in a minute. Certain medications inhibit your body from absorbing calcium. So there's many factors for calcium absorption. So there could be people from all ages here, but this gives you an idea of approximately how much calcium you would generally need in order to have enough calcium for your body to function. Now, again, keep in mind, just want you to know that just because you're taking in 1,000 milligrams of calcium, that's not how much your body is using. And it's not actually how much your body needs. The body doesn't use all of its calcium. Most of your excess calcium that the body can't absorb gets secreted out through the urinary tract, kidneys, urinary tract, and also through your stools. So your stools and your urine will always contain a certain amount of calcium. Very important to know. And that's completely and totally normal and needed. So a few things is that calcium has to be received externally into the body in order for us to get the right amount of calcium. So here's the thing is that we see a lot of foods, including non-dairy milks, orange juices, that are fortified with calcium. There's also tons of calcium products on the market. But the problem with these supplements, the problem with fortified calcium is this is calcium manufactured by human beings in a factory, and the absorption rate is so low and the waste is so high. So I was working with a client about 8 years ago whose doctor had told her you're at 60 years old, you've got to get on calcium supplements. Well, after being on calcium supplements for a year, this client started to have lumps all over her breast. Went in for, obviously that is a horrible scare. Went into the doctors. Long story short, it was calcium deposits all over her body, but especially in the breast tissues because that's a fatty area. And as we will learn, fat will solidify with calcium. So the problem is that all of these many of these over-the-counter calcium supplements, the body does not absorb that calcium very well. And if you're not flushing and drinking enough water, and unfortunately this client doesn't know what water is except to take a shower, so barely drinks water, had formed tons of calcium deposits all over her body. So this way of getting your calcium in, there's so little, it's less than 25% absorption rate. In fact, from my personal experience, it's less than 10% absorption rate. So don't be fooled by labels and, calcium fortified orange juice and calcium fortified milk. This is not calcium that's easily absorbed in the body. But the ones in liquids through your milks or orange juice is a little bit better absorbed than the ones through pills. So just letting you know. So how can we get this calcium? Well, the best way to get calcium is through food where calcium is naturally occurring. And calcium is, in my opinion, one of the easiest minerals to consume with food. It's one of the easiest minerals and very easy to absorb, especially on a plant-based diet. So dairy products are touted as the best way to get your calcium in. And I hear it all the time when I ask my clients to come away from dairy products and, eat a plant-based diet. Where do I get calcium? The reality of dairy products is that 30%, on paper, 30% or less of the calcium from the dairy products is actually absorbed in the system. Now, I'm going to show you why it's even less than that and causes even further issues that become big problems. But 30% or less. Plants, some of them, actually, this figure is even wrong because some plants are only 10%. But certain plants like bok choy can give you 80% of the absorption rate of the calcium from the plant. Nuts and seeds, high levels of calcium. But here is a good list for you. Of course, as a bias, I have only plants up here, but I will show you in a minute even some of the animal products that have a great amount. So you can see here, like chia seeds, just 2 tablespoons are going to give you almost 200 mgs of calcium. Almonds are high, dried figs are high, beans are high, broccoli is high, edamames are high, soy is very high in calcium. So okra is high, even oranges are high in calcium. Calcium is not difficult to get when you're on a plant-based diet. In fact, it's extremely rich in bioavailable calcium. So there are lots, almost everything has calcium in it, to tell you the truth. But I'm surprised it hasn't come up in the chat yet. What about oxalates? Spinach is extremely high in oxalates. And when there's oxalates present, the calcium cannot be absorbed. So although spinach, let's flip back to our other slide here. Is spinach on this list? Actually, it's not. Okay, we'll look at spinach on another list. But spinach is super high. It's like 100 milligrams of calcium, but less than 10% of that spinach, of the calcium in spinach, can be absorbed. But you will see in our iron side that spinach is an incredible way to get iron. So you don't have to run away from spinach because of the oxalates. But spinach is not the best way to get calcium. It's a wonderful way to get lots of phytonutrients, even vitamin C and iron, but not calcium. Now, many people will talk about the phytic acid inside beans, but it doesn't inhibit the absorption as much as the oxalates. And I want to show you the reason why in a second. So first, let's just talk and understand that there are some things called calcium robbers, and it is so real. Even your doctor knows that if you are a smoker or you drink alcohol or you have caffeine, those are direct inhibitors for your body to be able to absorb calcium. Calcium is absorbed in the intestinal tract. And so if you are having any disruptors in your intestinal tract, you are going to have trouble with calcium. The other problem is that just like water pills and any kind of diuretics, as soon as water is pulled out of your system, you're losing calcium. Caffeine does that, tobacco does that, sugar does that, alcohol does that in a big way. But caffeine and alcohol are the biggest. And so because they pull so much water out of your system, you lose so much calcium every time you consume any kind of alcohol or caffeine. But again, sugar robs the body of calcium. So does carbonated drinks, because they actually create acidity, which we'll talk in a minute about how we're actually losing calcium from our bones. And so many people love water carbonated, and unfortunately you lose calcium with every single gulp of that carbonated expensive water. Friends, water and eating well is like cheap. Don't spruce it up and don't try to make it fancy. You don't need lemon in your water except in the morning. Don't put cucumbers in there. Don't throw stuff in there. And just because, marijuana is legal doesn't mean it's good for you. Just because now alcohol is being sold even at the gas station and every single place that can sell alcohol, it doesn't mean it's good for you. And just because there is a coffee shop on all four corners of every intersection, it doesn't mean you and I should be consuming it. It means that there's big money in something because people are addicted. And it's cheap to make, and it makes a big profit because it makes you keep coming back for more. That's why they're selling it, not because it's good for you. So with all of that being said, is that there's a few things that we need to understand about calcium. What's very interesting here is that calcium, as I mentioned, is absorbed through the intestinal tract. So even if you are eating the right foods that are extremely high in calcium, if you have any disease affecting that mucosal integrity of the small intestinal tract, your calcium absorption will be impacted. So if you are experiencing gas, bloating, ulcers, Crohn's disease, diverticulitis, any kind of IBS, IBD situation, you're going to have trouble absorbing calcium because you might not be digesting fats properly. You could have a permeable layer inside your intestinal tract, and you have to have, think about your intestinal tract. think about the whole GI tube. It's so incredible. You know, it's your protective mechanism from disease. It's like it's your guards checking everything out. Is this poison? Is this not poison? Can we do this? Can we do that? Should this even go into the bloodstream, or should we get it out of there? You know, it's incredible. Like, no, send this to the liver. It's a toxin. It is like this huge protective tank that is like your first area of defense when you put something in your body. Your intestinal tract, your stomach, your whole GI tract has to make that decision of what are we going to do with this poison, this food, and what we have. It's incredible. Every single thing, friends, you put in your mouth is either going to feed disease or starve it. That's the reality. But if your intestinal tract is damaged or has lost its some sort of integrity in some way, if there's a compromise, no question about it, you have to be more meticulous about obviously healing your gut, but having a bit more calcium than normal, because it's going to be very difficult for your body to absorb calcium if there's any kind of impact, negative impact in your digestive tract. And especially, I want you guys to understand this. Undigested fats, so luminal fats, where these are fats that cannot be absorbed by the body. So too many saturated fats or the fatty chain acids are not able to be properly dissolved in the system or utilized. This creates a lot of trouble. And the problem is that they bind with calcium to make it insoluble. So when there's too many fats, especially processed fat that we get from our takeout food, that we get from our meats, they will actually bind to calcium, and then calcium is no longer soluble. For calcium to be absorbed in the body, it has to be soluble. So that's extremely important to know, that you have to have a healthy digestive tract, and you cannot have too many processed fats, because then it doesn't allow the calcium to be absorbed. And your body has to release a lot of bile in the system. And then when that bile comes out of your gallbladder, unfortunately, what has to happen is it has to deal with the fat that has the calcium in it. And then that extra bile has to be reabsorbed into the system through the kidneys and flushed out the urinary tract. Does this sound familiar to anybody? Is there any nutritionist on the line that we're mixing fats and calcium and bile together? Do you know what we're getting, friends? Kidney stones, gallstones, but mostly kidney stones. Yeah, that's real. It's calcium with fats, bile. Your kidneys can have constant waste. So this also, it doesn't matter how much healthy calcium you're eating. If you have too much saturated fats and processed fats in your diet, you're not going to be able to absorb the calcium properly. Here is the most exciting news of the whole day, of the whole seminar. This is real. Okay, I want you to tell me if you're excited like I'm excited. I'm very excited. Do you even know what I'm excited about? Carolyn, you're crazy. In a book called Proof Positive by Neil Nedley, Dr. Neil Nedley, he's a real doctor, MD, works out of Loma Linda, California. This is an incredible book, folks. It's like thousands of pages, but one of the books that I used a lot studying to be as a nutritionist. So I know this chart, doesn't look perfect, but that's because I took it out of a book, not the internet. But I want you to see something. I want you to see the amount of calcium that's in milk, 301 milligrams, whole milk, 290, that you would get from calcium. The catfish is a little low at 39, but salmon is much higher, actually. So, of course, you're getting it high in your greens as well, but look how much calcium is inside milk, okay? It's super, super, super high. But this is a study that's very interesting that I need you guys to piece together and understand this, is that if there's phosphorus present, okay, if there's phosphorus present, phosphorus binds to calcium, okay? So if there's you need some phosphorus, okay? But when there's too much phosphorus present, it binds to calcium, reducing its availability to be free calcium within the bloodstream. And if it can't be free calcium in the bloodstream, it cannot be absorbed into the bones. So this is the truth behind dairy products, because look at how much phosphorus is inside your milk, which is inside your cheese, which, friends, is inside your yogurt. So this is real. Look how much phosphorus is available in your green leafy vegetables. Just the right amount to get that calcium inside your bones. Like, by design, we are not supposed to be consuming the breast milk of another species, by design. Because although studies will show in the intestinal tract, oh yeah, 30% of that calcium is absorbed, barely any of it. In fact, because the phosphorus is so high, calcium does not get the chance to absorb into your system. In fact, it floats into the bloodstream, waiting for your hopefully not backed up liver to get rid of it so it can get out of your system. It also will go through your kidneys, and this causes calcification. This calcification, because your body can't even use this calcium bound with phosphorus, ends up in your kidneys, causing kidney stones. And this is from none other but our moo cows that are feeding our entire population their milk, their cheese, their yogurt that's supposed to be super healthy. So on the surface it is, on the label it is, but when you dig deeper and you see the true research and the science behind it, it's terrible. Okay, so what I want you to look at is, this is another wonderful chart by Dr. Neil Nedley that shows this is the phosphorus ratios. So I want you to see the ratio of phosphorus on meat products, on grain products. So you could say that wheat is like extremely high in calcium, but the phosphorus is so high, it's not going to be able to get the calcium out of it. But look at your legumes, your vegetables, your fruits. Look at dairy products, like, so dangerous, so crazy. So this whole phosphorus and calcium connection, that's like the missing link in understanding calcium absorption. Does that make sense? I hope I didn't get too scientific on you. So put in the chat a why if you're still with me. Yes, 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 you understand the connection, makes sense, awesome. So even though your doctor's telling you, drink lots of milk, you're over 40, you need to get back on that homo milk, you need to have yogurts every day, you need to tell them, yeah, well, what about the amount of phosphorus that's in that yogurt? He should have studied that, or she, and they should understand this connection, but maybe they don't, but it's real. So, and including your fish and your meat. Salmon, super high in calcium, but unfortunately super high in phosphorus. Yeah, that's real, friends. That is real. So here's another important understanding about acidic food and alkaline food. I have so much information for you today. I'm a good girl. I did lots of study and research. I don't want you giving me an hour of your time and you don't leave changed. All right. So understanding acidic foods versus alkaline foods, and what difference does that make for calcium? So I'm not going to take you through a whole science class, but we talked last week, for those that were here, about endocrine disruptors. So hormones are extremely important for everything. Now, understand that if your calcium levels raise too high, your thyroid is affected, and your thyroid sends out a hormone, calcitonin, to bring down those levels of calcium. That doesn't happen a lot to people that calcium is too high. Mostly what happens is that if the blood acidity level gets too high and you need more calcium, that's where your parathyroid gland, your parathyroid sends out a hormone. Okay, parathyroid stimulating hormone sends out a hormone that does a most amazing work. But I do just want to pause here for a second. I'm not going to go into great details on this, but if you are suffering with a thyroid issue or a parathyroid issue, your calcium levels are most likely going to be lower in your system. You may have trouble absorbing calcium because that's a hormone imbalance, and your thyroid and your parathyroid play a major role for keeping your calcium in balance, okay? So even though you might be having enough calcium, the absorption, reabsorption of calcium might be off. But now, let's see. We just had some acidic food. Acidic foods are foods that create a lot of acidity in the blood. So those are meat, those are dairy, those are pop, those are sugar. We just had some acidic food, okay? Again, don't want to get too scientific on you, but for those who have taken any kind of biology or anatomy or physiology course, you're probably like, oh, osteoclast. Well, let me just give you the quick version of osteoclast. Osteoclast is the process of breaking apart bone tissue to release calcium. There's a lot more information on the screen, but that is what happens. Your parathyroid, if your body knows that it needs more calcium, it will signal your body to actually go through this process of osteoclast, of breaking apart your bone tissue. Why on earth would it do that? Because if the blood is acidic, disease grows. And homeostasis, the law that governs the human body, knows that when the blood is acidic, that's danger. That is cancer, that is disease. We can't stay there. Does anybody know in the group what is homeostasis for the alkaline level of the human body? Does anybody know what the human body's alkaline level is? Going once, going twice, 3 times. Anybody know what the human body's alkaline level is? Is it 5? Is it 6? Is it 7? Is it 8? Close to 7, 7.8, 7.45, 7. And the winner is, it's about 7.34. Somebody might have done a quick check on the internet.
7.5.
So 7.45 is not terrible, a little bit alkaline. 7.2 is tiny bit acidic, but most humans average about 7.34, okay? So if your blood starts to get acidic because something you ate or something you did or something you thought, the blood will get acidic. And when the blood is acidic and goes below that 7.34, then your system signals trouble, trouble, trouble. Your kidneys are filtering out like 12 liters of blood at all times. Let's just say hundreds and thousands of liters of blood, okay? So because of that, if it recognizes that your blood acidity, that your blood is acidic, through the adrenal glands, it signals a hormone, and that hormone through your parathyroid tells your body to start to create this osteoblast, okay? And so it'll break apart your bones. Why? Because back to screen 2, 99% of your calcium is stored in your bones, and your bones are the calcium reservoir. So since calcium is super, 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 super alkaline, alkalines up here, acidity's down here, and we're in the middle, then calcium gets released into the bloodstream. And when calcium is released into the bloodstream, then all the red alarms are off, and no longer do we have acidic blood. But unfortunately, we're left with broken bones. Maybe not broken, but definitely osteoporosis is setting in. Definitely bone loss is setting in. Definitely pain in the knees and the joints is setting in. That's the reality. And if the food you have has caused a lot of inflammation and it is by weak parts of your bones and tissues, now you're going to have inflammation. So now you're going to have a combination of arthritis or osteoarthritis because you have inflammation plus bone loss. Really terrible. So this is the reality of having high acidic foods, and your dairy products, your animal products, period, your pop, all of these foods, including, friends, stress. Whenever you release cortisol, your blood becomes acidic. That's the beginning and that's the end. Okay? So whenever we are stressed out, whenever we have that negative thought or that worrisome thought or we're bothered, you release cortisol. And when there's natural releases of cortisol that don't affect this system, like when you wake up, your body releases the right amount of cortisol to get you going. And then we drink coffee and cortisol gets shot, and then your body has to release a lot of cortisol after to get you going. What a mess. But whenever we drink coffee, of course, then your body's robbed of calcium and iron, if I could say. But stress causes an acidity situation in the body, and your body has to break up bones and joints to get you some much needed calcium just to fix the situation. But whenever you consume any of these foods, including meat, dairy, eggs, fish, believe it or not, all of these create a calcium loss. More calcium is lost from dairy products than dairy products could ever put into your body. That is the hardcore truth. So, wow, I can't believe we're actually going to get into iron. And I know that there is a lot of questions in the chat. I'm going to stop reading it because that's going to set me off. Okay. So if anybody has any question about calcium, I am going to just give a brief understanding of iron. Hopefully we can get through this before 8:30. If not, I promised a part 2. So understanding iron, because iron too is a mineral that is much needed by the body. So there's different kinds of iron. Does anybody know what the difference is between heme iron and non-heme iron? Somebody tell me where heme iron comes from in the chat. I want to know where heme iron comes from. Where does a human being get heme iron from? Does anybody know without searching on the internet? Right. Heme iron is actually, both of you guys are right. Heme iron is found in blood, and it comes from the blood of animals. Interesting. So if you did a quick search on heme iron versus non-heme iron, you will find that most everybody toots about how great heme iron is because it's very easily absorbed and stored in the body. Okay, so that's interesting. Non-heme iron is not easily absorbed and stored in the body. So heme iron comes from animal products. Any animal, whether it's fish, whether it's shrimp, whether it's beef, whether it's chicken, whether it's any kind of something with a face, the flesh of dead animals has lots of heme iron. Your plants have non-heme iron. Now, it is absolutely the truth that your body has a very hard time, not very hard time, a harder time absorbing non-heme iron than heme iron. Once you eat foods that have heme iron in, It's easily absorbed and stored. Easily absorbed and stored. Non-heme iron requires the body to work very hard, but not a lot of it gets stored. It's extremely bioavailable to the system, but it does take a little bit more work. In fact, a lot more work than heme iron. So it would seem on surface, again, just like the calcium connection, it would seem on the surface that dairy products, salmon, and all of these things are the best way to get calcium. But we learned that with the phosphorus, they actually are the worst place to get calcium. Your leafy green plants, your nuts, your seeds, your beans, your chia, those are extremely bioavailable places to get calcium. Now, when it comes to heme iron and non-heme iron, there's an interesting connection because your liver actually stores your spleen and your bone marrow actually store this heme iron. So eventually, whatever's left over from your non-heme iron will turn into heme iron in the places that you store it, mostly the liver. But there's also some storage in your spleen and your bone marrow. And so when you're consuming heme iron, you get incredible large stores of iron in your liver, in your spleen, in your bone marrow. Incredible stores. Researchers found, and this is also in Neil Nedley's book, Proof Positive. Also, I don't know if you know Michael Greger. He's another MD, medical doctor, but two researchers. And, you know, it's very interesting because Michael Greger's study was done only a couple of years ago. Neil Nedley's study was done more than 10 years ago. And although they are different studies, they are extremely connected. Dr. Neil Nedley, honestly, if you can get that book, Proof Positive, download it. I don't even think you can get copies of it anymore. But his study and research, even though it seems old and out of date, it is not. It's today that people are building on the research that he had done so many years ago. So very interesting because they have found that a higher intake of heme iron was significantly associated with the risk of type 2 diabetes. For every 1 milligram of heme iron, that's not a lot. There was a 16% increased risk of type 2 diabetes because of the iron storage. Because heme iron goes very quickly into your tissues, very quickly. Now, the same has also been found for cancer with up to 12% increased risk for every milligram of daily heme iron exposure. In fact, said Dr. Michael McGregor, that we can actually tell how much meat someone is eating when they look at the tumors because you can see the heme iron stores. And Neil Nedley in Proof Positive showed, and all the studies are listed in his book, a number of studies showed that there was an increase of storage. If there was an increase of storage of iron in the body, specifically heme iron, it promotes the risk of colon cancer. It promoted cell multiplication of cancer cells and cardiovascular disease. So here's the thing about heme iron compared to non-heme iron. And by the way, you can do the research. Those with anemia, those that are anemic, there is no studies that show that more people are anemic on plant-based diets than meat diets. In fact, my clients that are anemic that come to me, I put them on a plant-based diet and their iron increases. Why is that? Because the non-heme iron is more bioavailable and produces less waste. But your body has to work a little bit harder at getting the iron out of plants. But once it takes it out, it's a lot more bioavailable. So you don't want to be having this much meat because heme iron is so available. Think about it for a minute. Just think about it for a minute. looking at this slide, the heme iron comes from animals, the blood of animals. So when we're eating beef, you have, whether you want to think about it or not, you have the blood of the animal inside that animal product, the fish, everything, because it's stored in their liver, it's stored in their tissues, but it's stored in their blood. Tell me something. Fish, chicken, beef, pork, full of iron. Where did that animal get their iron from? How are they full of iron? Did they eat another animal to get the iron? No, friends. They ate non-heme iron, and now they're full of iron. Ain't that incredible? And we think we need to eat heme iron to get heme iron faster. No, because now we have too much iron stores and we're creating diseases because we literally have animal blood inside our blood, and the reserve of that iron inside our liver, our spleen, and our bone marrow are actually creating diseases because God never designed us to have iron that was supposed to be quickly absorbed into the system. It's just like nuts, okay? You have a bunch of walnuts, you have almonds, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds. If you got those in its original state, you wouldn't be able to eat a lot because God designed for you not to eat a lot. If you eat too many nuts, you get a lot of inflammation. But now, as smart manufacturing people in this 2024, we have machines that unshell all our nuts. We sell them to you in a bag and you eat mounds and mounds of them. You were never designed to do that. You were designed to unshell them and eat them so you don't eat too much. Just like plants, although it takes a longer time for your body to absorb it, it's that way by design. So whether it's iron or whether it's calcium, the reality is most foods that give you calcium and iron are actually simply the same. Beans are loaded with calcium and iron. Your green leafy vegetables are loaded with calcium and iron. In fact, most all of your plants, your chia is so high in calcium and it has iron. All your nuts, your seeds, your grains, but we don't need to eat mounds of them in order to get the iron and the calcium because they're so bioavailable. And by having animal products on a very regular basis, we create stores of excess iron that creates disease, and we create acidity in the blood that robs our body and our bones of the calcium. And friends, naturally, as you age, you already lose your ability to keep calcium in your body. It's very difficult for you to absorb these minerals. And it's the same robbers, whether it's alcohol, whether it's coffee, whether it's sugar, whether it's soda drinks, anything carbonated, tobacco, marijuana, they all pull calcium and iron from your body. Sugar robs so much iron from your system. And that is the absolute reality.
In life, there are very many challenges that we face. But there is that one person who takes care of all the situations, and that is Jesus. I believe God is taking care of you. Be not dismayed, whatever betide, God will take care of you. Beneath His wings of love abide, God will take care of you. God will take care of you through every day. toil when heart doth fail.
God will take care of you.
When dangers fills your path assail,
God will take care of you. God will take care of you through every day, all the way. He will take care of you. God will take care of you. God will take care of you every day, all the way. He will take care of you. God will take care of you.
No matter what, maybe that test.
And God will take care of you.
lean weary one upon his breast.
God will take care of you. God will take care of you through every day, all the way. He will take care of you. God will take care of you.
My God will
God will
My God will
take care of you
in every situation.
every day, all the way.
He will take care.
He will
My God
take
will take
care of you. God will take care of you. Amen.
The Lord will take care. My brother, my sister, the Lord will take care. Oh,
A blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine, hero salvation, purchase of God, born of His Spirit, washed in His blood. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. Perfect submission, all is at rest. I in my Savior watching and waiting, looking above, filled with His goodness, lost in His love. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song.